Hello, I'm James Holloway, and among other things, I am the creator of the Booklet of Bounties, a system-neutral role-playing game zine that is currently on Kickstarter. And in this short video, I thought I would guide you through the Booklet of Bounties and specifically like the process of creating a bounty hunting scenario using its tools. So right now, I've got a digital copy of the Booklet of Bounties. This is a pre-release copy, so it is not exactly the same as the one that will be at the end of the Kickstarter, but mostly similar, I would say. And I've got some dice that I'm going to use to help create the scenario. And let's just go ahead and get started. So here you can see the Booklet of Bounties. This is a page of one of the potential fugitives. Now you can just pick whichever one you like. I'm going to go ahead and roll on this table to see which of the characters that appear in the booklet our player characters are going to be hunting. I rolled a 7, so that's going to be Lucilla Mortsafe, Blackmailer. And sorry, I was briefly distracted by noticing a typo I have to fix. But I scroll on down to page 14 where I can find Lucilla Mortsafe. There she is. What do we know about Lucilla Mortsafe? She's, well, a blackmailer, like it says, and just looking at her preferred weapons and things, small sword, elegant but easily concealable pistol. She has various, things she revealed about people who didn't want them revealed. She doesn't seem like someone who's kind of mainly a violent antagonist. So I'm going to go ahead and see what she's done that our player characters might be going after her. I rolled a 4, so she got a down on his luck doctor to confess falsifying records of a noble heir's paternity. Both sides want the evidence. Now, one thing that's kind of left unclear by this prompt is the down on his luck doctor lying? Um, the you know, did he actually falsify the records of the noble heir's paternity, or is it a fake but a convincing one? So she's um And when I say both sides, I guess we're talking about some kind of disputed inheritance where if this person would be, if this person would turn out to be a fake, then someone else would inherit the fortune, right? Or someone's trying to use this guy to get their hands on the fortune. It's a Tichborne claimant type of situation. But both the people who would benefit if the current heir turned out not really to be legitimate and the current heir want the paperwork, right? They want this so-called evidence, whether it's true or false. One wants to quash it and the other wants to publish it. So our player characters might get hired by one side in this. They might be one of the people, if we've got a noble character in the party, they could be the person who's being blackmailed. But in a bounty hunting situation, I imagine they're being hired almost a bit more like private detectives. It seems like the kind of thing you wouldn't advertise, you know? All right. Would be fun. It would be funny if you could have them be hired by both sides. If the characters are kind of known to do work for hire, both parties to the dispute might come and try to hire them. Oh, we heard you did such a wonderful job finding the blue jewel. All right, let's take a look. Lucilla's hideout. That is 5. A quiet little farm with sheep and horses. Idyllic, really. The property is owned by Mortsafe's cousin, so it isn't in her name. This is a bit of a detective hideout as well. They're probably not going to have a huge amount of trouble, you know, making their way through all the traps and tricks of a quiet little farm with horses. So the challenge is going to be more finding out where it is. Let's see who's working with Lucilla. We've got house sprites, ignored by most modern people, but still everywhere. This is a bit of an interesting twist on Lucilla because, like, when we think of a blackmailer, you think of someone who's kind of from a contemporary or pseudo-contemporary society, someone who like opens people's mail and, maybe slips a bag full of coins to one of the servants to get the hot gossip or digs up ancient public records. But if this is set in a magical society, then it's very possible that, like, people throughout history have believed that various kinds of imps or spirits or goblins live in houses. And, if they're placated with bowls of milk or what have you, then they won't cause any mischief. But if not, then they will. And I like the idea, again, we're getting an impression of a rich family. So it's very possible that the very wealthy just don't think about this because it's the servants who placate the house spirits. So these people are putting out little, baskets of ginger snaps or what have you, and the house spirits are eating them up. But the house spirits see everything and know everything. So if Lucilla unlike most kind of wealthy people. And then that may mean something like, maybe Lucilla is wealthy but has fallen on hard times, or is not really wealthy and is just faking it. I mean, I'm only saying she's wealthy because she got a fancy dress. Anyway, whatever. The point is, Lucilla has somehow got a way to talk to these house sprites, and so she's getting information out of them. And this could be the secret of her blackmail in general, right? It's not just that these are her accomplices on this one case with the phony doctor. So she, talking to house sprites, she found out that people in this family have doubts about the paternity, and then she either chased down the, once wealthy but now fallen on hard times family doctor, or she bribed some desperate person who'd been struck off the rules or what have you to falsify this paper. Okay, and let's roll a complication. Six, no one believes that the bounty hunters won't use the blackmail material themselves. Suspicion and paranoia everywhere. This tracks. If you've got a blackmailer and potentially dangerous blackmail information, then we're setting ourselves up for the classic end of the run double cross, right? The people who get the information from the player characters are then going to try and make sure they don't blab. Traditionally, this is by having them killed or whatever, and I never quite understand this as a result of this is a sort of Shadowrun classic, right? Blackmailed by Mr. You're always betrayed by Mr. Johnson. I said blackmailed, but that's just because I'm thinking about Lucilla Mortsafe. And obviously that doesn't make any sense, because if Mr. Johnson thought he had some people that were capable of taking you on, then why didn't they just do the mission? And anyway, they're going to do something to try and get the characters to forget about this information. And now another vulnerability arises because the other side are just going to try and pressure the player characters. So even solving this case and bringing Lucilla Mortsafe to justice, that's not going to be an end to the problem. Maybe they want to get Lucilla in jail because they know they can like have her killed in jail, but they can't find her because even if they put her in prison, assuming she has access to pencil and paper or what have you, she might still be able to cause problems for them. So this doesn't sound like a going through the back alleys roughing people up one. This is more of a like a mystery, and I like the idea of having I suggested both sides hire the player characters, but also it would be fun to have some rivals dogging the steps of the players, always one step behind or even ahead. Let's look at some of the other possible complications that we could add to this. What about the law? Are they involved? So we've got a posse of local citizens required by law to watch out for crime are trying to catch the bounty target, but putting themselves at risk. I think this doesn't quite make sense to have Lucilla being pursued by like a pitchfork and torch mob, because I feel like blackmail is such a kind of upper class crime, or maybe it just feels that way. So we have to have some enthusiastic, some member of the family has decided to go it on their own, and they're plunging into the underworld and talking to Lucilla's various contacts and allies, and not really understanding that they're endangering themselves by getting down in the demimonde where player characters belong, but like impetuous aristocrats don't. Although it's very likely that your player characters, at least if they're anything like mine, will be very unsympathetic toward an impetuous aristocrat and just let him get in trouble. How about the environment? Probably this isn't going to be a huge factor. Let's roll it and see if we get anything fun. Five, an area of the target zone is off limits. Is there sacred ground, a haunted house? The locals say stay out of it. I do like the idea of a haunted house or something to do with the house spirits, because that goes back to the thing of how Lucilla got her information. So if Lucilla is capable of dealing with these spirits, then maybe that's like an additional defense she has, is that unlike a lot of people, she's able to weaponize the spirits of the house that she's staying in, which is like this rural place. So it makes sense that it's got, goblins and kilmuluses and so on. So that could be something. That could be something you have to get past in order to get to Lucilla herself. The locals. Now we know we're going into a rural area if we've tracked down Lucilla's house, so we might be dealing with the locals in like the Tony neighborhood where the blackmail happens, or we might be dealing with the locals in the sort of farming community where Lucilla is hiding out. Let's see which one it is. I got six. The presence of the hunters throws the community into a panic. Uh, okay, this kind of makes sense actually. So we have the we could do this in either side. We could do this at the beginning where a bunch of bounty hunters nosing around these, or even detectives, right? Is the old house structure or any mystery story structure where there's all these other people who aren't the blackmailer, but who do have something to hide. So you could do that in the upper class area. And in fact, you could do both as an intentional parallel that when they arrive in the rural community, they don't spook Lucilla, who's an old hand, but they do scare these people who think that those guys are there to round them up for poaching or smuggling or moonshining, you know? I think the idea of it being moonshiners, that'd be fun. That sort of presupposes quite a modern fantasy society, but then I guess so does blackmailing people about like paternity documents and getting doctors to testify, right? All sounds a bit early modern. Okay, and finally, the unnatural. Now, will this one I may not bother with because I've got the house spirits, and that's already a fantastical touch to this story. So I'm just going to roll it and see what I get, and I'll leave it in or not. Three, spirit of revenge stalks the bounty target. Mortals it gets close to become overwhelmed with thoughts of vengeance. I don't think so. I do like the idea that the reason Lucilla has like retired to the countryside is that she's being pursued by something. And we could tie this in not so much with the question of revenge as with the idea of the rival bounty hunters, right? If both sides want the information, then the other ones might hire some other bounty hunters. And as it happens, we've got some rival bounty hunters here. I could just pick one of these guys on page 21. But yeah, I'm just going to real quickly roll to see who the other bounty hunter is. And, maybe they'll wind up having the magical powers to summon this spirit to go after Lucilla. Otherwise, we'll drop the spirit. I think it's not necessary. So for gimmick, or excuse me, for core concept, I got devious scum willing to do anything for money. So one side or the other of this debate has been latched onto by some unscrupulous chancer who's using this to like get money out of it. And who is the kind of person like suspicion might fall on the PCs, but the other one is the kind of person who might use the blackmail material for themselves. So that I think is quite good. Particularly if our player characters are more scrupulous, then this character could work as a kind of contrast to them. What is their gimmick? So we have their core concept, which is like, what's their deal? And then their gimmick, which is like, what is their distinctive feature? What's their like pipe and deerstalker hat? So I rolled a five. They have a larger team of bounty hunters back at headquarters. So this devious scum is actually like the ringleader of some kind of team. And so I think that the larger team of bounty hunters are probably like research people because this is more of a detective thing. So this is like when the rich jerks from the fancy detective agency take the case, and the other side has to hire the scrappy underdog player characters, which would suggest that it's the people who are not currently in the line of inheritance who are the ones hiring the PCs. That's a possibility. And then finally, what is this person's secret? I got one. They're actually a criminal rival seeking to eliminate the competition. That ties in. So actually, this person is another blackmailer, and they're trying to get Lucilla's secret for how she gets all this blackmail material. And so what they've done is it's a blackmail syndicate, and they've just sent one person to go posing as a private detective and get hired by the one of the two sides in the dispute. And so now they're after Lucilla. And in fact, maybe like Lucilla just wants to use the blackmail material to get money, but she sort of has principles, so she's not going to, blow everything up after she gets paid. She's a woman of her word, et cetera, et cetera. But this person we know is devious scum, so they might be capable of doing anything. And then they both arrive in town, and people's suspicions get set off. Particularly like the idea of two lots of detectives arriving to chase a fugitive. Okay, that sounds like a scenario. Some rich people hire the player characters to track down Lucilla Mortsafe, the blackmailer, and then we have a middle period where they're basically trying to put together the clues to locate where Mortsafe's blackmail letters are coming from, and the obstacle is not Lucilla herself, but these other rival bounty hunters, who, as we know, are devious scum and who might try to, like, if they do something illegal, pin it on the player characters, or they might start a fight and even attack the player characters. Although this doesn't sound like a very physical antagonist, but And then eventually we find the location of the hideout and we go to the small farming village. And it turns out maybe even that the arrival of the previous set of bounty hunters has got everybody riled up so that when the player characters arrive in town, people are very suspicious and maybe even violent. Um, and then finally, we track down Lucilla, and we have to get past all the house spirits and get the blackmail information, like this document, the signed affidavit of the doctor or whatever. And then we have to deal with the suspicious client who thinks that we might be trying to use this blackmail material, which is complicated by the fact that the other person definitely would. And hey, maybe your players would as well. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, I mean that sounds like a scenario, and it didn't take that long to create, and that is the Booklet of Bounties, you know. Um, if I don't have an evening's entertainment planned, all I have to do is just roll a couple times on these tables, whip up some relevant stats, maybe find a map of a farmhouse, although tell you what, medieval farmhouses at least have quite simple interior architecture, and I'm good to go. I could even add, the bounty broker themselves as a thing, or I could add some petty crooks, which would make sense. Like, especially if you're kind of like going through the underworld, you might run into a few of these petty crooks on the way. These might be people who know what's going on with Lucilla, like a self-important grifter who runs a crooked dice game. Sounds like the person who might know where a blackmailer lays her head, um, or a money lender or a seller of quack medicines. In fact, one of these, a Jelmy Simcoe or Barton Kerr might actually be the doctor in the case, right? So you can flesh it out a little bit further if you like, but I think that that's a pretty good core for a fun evening or two of your favorite fantasy role-playing game, and that's what you get in the Booklet of Bounties, plus a lot of great art by Letty Wilson, who did all these fun little occasional illustrations, and Hodag, who did the fugitive portraits. And Letty also did the wonderful cover. So that's the Booklet of Bounties. That's how you use it to make, quick bounty hunting scenarios for your favorite fantasy RPG. It's on Kickstarter now. It's funded, but I'm really hoping to get to my one and only stretch goal, which is a bonus payment for one of our wonderful artists. And if you enjoyed me kind of, using these prompts to freestyle a scenario in this video, and you want to spend £2 on the digital or £6 on the print copy, then head on over to the Kickstarter link, which will come right after I'm done talking, and maybe take a look at it. All right. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope that you go check out the Booklet of Bounties now on Kickstarter.